So what I'm going to show you now is something that no one noticed before Bandler and Grinder and the people around them, who for the most part were a bunch of really smart 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds who then evolved into like really significant people in the field of neurolinguistic programming. Robert Dilts was one of them, Leslie Cameron, who then became Leslie Cameron Bandler for a short period of time, and a bunch of other people. One of the people who was associated with the group in Santa Cruz in the middle to late, and then tipping early into the early 1980s, one of the people in that group, not the 19-year-olds who were sort of coagulated around John Grinder, Richard Bandler, and Frank Puselic, by the way, whose name is often forgotten, was a man named Jonathan Rice. Jonathan Rice was a clinical psychologist, and he'd been in practice for quite a long time. He was running a clinic in Monterey, California, which is near Santa Cruz, and another one in Carmel, which is near Monterey, which is near Santa Cruz. And I won't go into the story about how he ended up in a workshop. The very first public workshop that John Grinder and Richard Bandler put on, the way Jonathan told me the story, Jonathan was my main teacher in the early and middle and into the early 1990s. I mean, a little bit at a time, here and there, here and there, here and there. He watched these guys do some stuff that he didn't know how to do, and like right there in front of everyone, and then test the work, and the person didn't have the phobia anymore, or the person didn't visibly cringe at the thought of thinking about something in the future or the past. And that in some way was significant for that demonstration subject, because they had access to the past without having to contract to stay safe, or they had access to a future in which they could expand out and operate the way they wanted as they contemplated that expansion. And he said, I have no idea how to do this stuff. So he became he became part of the circle, not the inner circle, because he was busy. But what Jonathan had was all this really, really fine education, with this psychological education with a specialization in early childhood development. And his 10 years of experience as a clinician, 10 years at that point. And he contributed some things into the NLP model, but mostly what he did was learn that model, learn from Bandler and Grinder. And so here's Jonathan, and he had what he learned from Bandler and Grinder over here. And then over here, he had his experience as a psychotherapist. And then he did this really remarkable thing. He went poof, and he pushed these two things together. And sometimes but mostly and what came out of it was much better NLP and much better psychotherapy. So I had the really good fortune to be introduced to NLP. So my introduction was through Jonathan's synthesis of psychotherapy and neurolinguistic programming. And all of our students, so that I benefited from that from Jonathan, and all of our students benefit through that, Jonathan's lineage, through me and through Carla Camus, my colleague who teaches with me. She lives in Seattle. This nobody noticed until Bandler and Grinder and the group around them put it together in the middle 1970s. We're going to go through this pretty quickly, and then so that you can at least get a sense of how we use it, because we use it all the time. It's one of the basic skills in really good neurolinguistic or transformational neurolinguistic change work. Although, okay, I'm still back on the subject of Jonathan Rice. Bandler and Grinder noticed this stuff, but they never figured out how to use it very well. Jonathan noticed it and said, holy moly, because Bandler and Grinder weren't used to sitting with somebody and doing, healing work, change work with them. They had these techniques for changing things, but they weren't like deep down practitioners who got into the lives and the experience across time of their clients. Jonathan that was his training. That's what he loved to do. He was brilliant at it. He got even more brilliant when he started to include the NLP. And the NLP got even more, how shall I say it, became more decent, less programming, and more healing um, through Jonathan's filters and experience. But Jonathan paid a lot of attention to the physiology stuff I'm about to show you. The people who noticed it really didn't. They just kind of taught people there's this, and this, and then they didn't use it very much. For us, it's the basis of everything.